How was your bakery run?
Perfect. Only downside is somebody decided to smash the windows out of the local shoe shop last night.
Oh,
So there was a bunch of quarter
classic.
inch thick plate glass all over this one right in front of the shop. Pretty sucky.
Yeah. I was thinking, when you were saying, "Hey, we're gonna try to sneak out and go to the bakery," as you texted me that I was looking at what I was eating for breakfast, and I was wondering what the most unusual breakfast is because, or at least that you've had, because I
Oh,
was eating. At the time, you texted me that
yeah.
you were going on your bakery run, which
Yeah,
sounded delightful.
it is. Yes. Not in the category of most unusual.
I was having hot dogs and hummus for breakfast.
Oh. I you know what
Now,
immediately comes to mind for me, and this is because before you even said hot dogs and hummus, which is a great episode title, um, is being out in Death Valley visiting my grandfather, who was a geologist, and he spent his falls and springs in Death Valley for like 50 plus years. So we would go visit him quite often because otherwise they lived in Northern California. We, for the most part, lived in Southern California. So that was kind of a nice meeting point. It was very cool to go out there and like see the things that he spent his life's work like uncovering, and not archaeologically, but
right, right.
mapping wise, and like one of the he was one of the early theorists about tectonic plate. It's just crazy stuff.
Interesting.
But I would say I'm fairly certain that a breakfast in Death Valley consisted of Ritz crackers and sardines
Hmm,
because he had a
interesting.
closet full of like these kippered snacks and sardines.
Well, yeah, it's probably because they,
They don't go bad.
exactly, you know,
Yeah.
cracker
Yep.
crackers may be stale, but I mean, it's Death Valley.
Right. It's super dry and
So,
yeah.
so the story behind the hot dogs and hummus, which weirdly enough has carried on for quite some time. I was introduced to that weird concoction.
What you're saying is this is not new.
This is not new. No, no,
Okay.
no, 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 no. This is now going on 30 years old, actually.
Oh, wow.
So when we were,
The old
when I was,
standby.
yeah, when I was stationed in Saudi Arabia, during Desert Storm, once all of the, actions had ceased, and we were actually able to kind of get out and experience Saudi Arabia. We went into town, and the host that we had basically served us hot dogs, hummus, and pita. I don't know if the hot dogs were something that they were just trying to like, hey, I know Americans like hot dogs, but this was the first time I'd ever really tried hummus. I've had pita, obviously. I mean, it's just bread, but
Hmm.
not like homemade or anything like that.
Hmm.
But just the concoction of the three,
Hmm.
for some reason, I was just like, I kind of like this, and
Well,
it
plus you were in the
weirdly,
army, right? So like
well, true, because it was either that
there
or
wasn't a
MREs.
yeah, there wasn't a giant
Trust,
buffet
trust,
table of fine cuisine laid out in front of you.
exactly. My bar was set rather low on
Oh,
what five-star cuisine was at that time.
oh, I've had
And
some
so this is,
MREs. You can
yeah.
buy them at the local army surplus here.
Well, if you ever have the opportunity to go and enjoy yourselves a skosh of chicken a la king,
Mm.
the absolute worst one of them all. Now,
Doesn't sound so bad. That's like backpackers food, you know. Stay
yeah,
away from the beef stroganoff, people.
yeah,
It's not good.
and and just I don't know if you really need to know this or anybody else who might be hearing this needs to know this, but certain foods in MREs were essentially designed to prevent you from having to go to
Go
the
to the
bathroom.
bathroom. Yeah, jeez. Is it freeze dried?
The chicken a la king,
Yeah.
no, it literally looks like it would. And you look at the package, it looks as if you just threw up in that package. It's visually unappealing,
That's
and
what beef stroganoff, freeze dried beef stroganoff looks like. Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh,
God.
it's
You need to tell
tragic.
everybody what MRE stands for, right? Because
You'll
that's a That's an army
meals
thing.
ready to eat.
Yeah, and it's just like this
So
black kind of. Is it like a? It almost looks like
it's
just a
this
vinyl sealed package, right? Like, but
yeah.
you
So
can't see into it.
it's this sealed, dark brown sealed package. Now, I don't know if they're like that anymore. It was funny is that the further and further I went into my career in the army, we were starting to get there literally was a distinction between like Army MREs and Air Force MREs.
Oh,
And
really?
Air Force MREs were like 5-star fine dining in comparison. They had hot sauce in there. They had M&Ms, they had like different
Well,
like
that's
I
because they
had
had the whole space race thing on there. Like they're,
oh
yeah, right. They're part of that. So they're sending people to space with these, but they might
yeah.
as well let that food fare trickle down to
It,
the normal ranks too.
look, let's be honest. I mean, the Air Force calls their barracks dorms. Their MREs are 5-star in comparison to our freeze-dried pork patties or
I
freeze-dried
can't
beef
tell if
patties.
you're kind of if you're jealous or if you're trying to like say they're not as manly as you. I can't. Give me a sense of where you're coming
I
from
feel
because I think you
I
feel like
feel
you
it's a
maybe
little
made the
both.
wrong choice.
I feel it was a little. No, I didn't make the wrong choice. I did enjoy my weird life in the army. If I were to, if say one of my children were to come up to me and say, hey, Dad, I'd like to join the military. Which one would
Which
you
one? Yeah,
suggest? I would say Air Force,
yeah.
even though I love the Army and true and blue Army or green and mean or whatever it is that you want to call it.
Are there army
But
pilots? Helicopter
yeah,
pilots,
yeah,
I assume.
yep,
Yeah.
helicopter pilots and yeah, there's
But what
there
about
are.
like jet airplanes? Is there an army
No,
part of that?
that's theirs.
That's Air Force and Navy, right?
Yeah, they get to keep it. And Navy aviators and
Yeah.
Army, or I mean Air Force pilots.
And
No, we
Marines, do they fly airplanes too?
yeah, Marines fly airplanes
Jeez.
off of. They get shuffled around. We
Yeah.
walk everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
You march. I don't think you walk anywhere. You march.
here here here's
You rock.
so here's a little bit of the jealousy. So during Desert Storm, now you're talking about Death Valley and your grandfather and
Mhm.
him being a geologist. So obviously he's digging in this sand, this terrain,
Yep.
and probably you might have as well, and what the difficulty is of digging in hard compacted stone sandy earth, right?
Hmm.
It's not like digging at the beach. It's the completely different kind of sand. And so we've talked well in the past about my affinity for the good old army tool called the entrenching tool, the E tool,
Yes, the E tool.
and so we had to dig our bunkers, our what was called the individual fighting position or IFPs. We had to dig all of that stuff by hand. Air Force came out and they were like, hey, we can help you guys out. We've got backhoes and everything else. And of course, we're all like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. We'll be able to like dig these, big, massive bunkers and things. And we're talking massive. They were huge, but with a backhoe and boom, get done just like that. Well, my first sergeant decided, no,
That's
it's not
cheating.
in that's cheating. So we feel like the Army can just dig with their little teeny hand tools and stuff. And so as we
So this
see
is
them
like
way, way off in the
I'm
distance,
now seeing the
it's
parallels to architecture here.
uh, yeah,
let's
yeah,
let's pretend these new automation tools don't exist. Let
exactly. You totally picked up where I was going with that because
No. We're gonna do this by hand. Don't you worry. It'll be just fine. We're gonna
old
reinvent
school
the
is
wheel.
the old school way is the only school way.
Yes.
And you're just like, really, man? Really? I mean, and so when I talk fondly about the Air Force, which my father was in,
Mine too.
I,
Yeah.
I feel a bit of both jealousy and animosity towards our little brothers.
Yeah.
It was
I can see
it
that.
was it was if you think about it, I mean, it was the Army Air Corps during World War II, and then they split off and became the Air Force
Mm.
after during the Korean War era, and so we always still consider them like our little brother who left home and said, "Forget you guys, I'm
Yeah.
not coming back,"
Right.
kind of thing.
Oh
And
man.
so, I mean, we still love them. I mean, we rely on them for our rides
Yeah.
to and from combat zones. So,
They're your Uber.
uh, yeah, exactly.
Combat
I
Uber.
mean, I mean, I on my way to and from Desert Storm, we rode in the belly of a C5,
Shuttle service. There you
where
go. Yeah.
exactly where we sat in a bunch of like the jump seats and stuff that I'm sure everybody's seen them in the in the movies and stuff like that, where you see people sitting in jump seats and stuff during that, and so we were in those with our launchers and our missiles basically in the belly. So it was kind of nerve wracking and kind of exciting all at the same time.
I'm sure. Yeah. Wow. It's crazy to have stories like that because you just don't think about that. I mean, I don't think about that, and I don't think our kids think about that. It's
No, no,
there. It's just it's a different. It's a totally different reality.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's on periodic occasions, most of the time I don't sit back and think about my time in the military, but I was, when I got your text this morning about going to the bakery, as I'm like, dipping a piece of hot dog into some hummus,
It took you back.
I'm thinking it completely, transported me back.
Wow.
And I was just thinking about that. And I was just thinking, I'm like, huh, I wonder how many, especially in our profession, I have met veterans that
Mm-hmm.
were also architects,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so few and far between. And I've in my career, I've only worked with one other person who's was in the military,
Mm-hmm.
and that is an architect, and it's just we seem to be unicorns in a way, but one of these days I kind of hope to start meeting more and also try to encourage more veterans to come into the profession, because there is something kind of interesting about the work ethic that came out of the Army for me, or whatever other branch that for anybody else, that just kind of seems like it weirdly translates to architecture.
Hmm.
Is as much as we don't see the correlation between the work ethic and the ethos between the two,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be surprised. You'd be so surprised at like where my and maybe this is a downfall of mine, but where my don't quit, get the job done, no matter what it takes kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentality from the Army is exactly the same way that I approach it in architecture. And so if there's times where, and you and I talked about a few weeks ago where I had to pull like an all-nighter,
Mm-hmm.
to me in my mind, it was just like, so, I mean, got to get the job done. Just, shut up, head down, work, get it done. What other option do you have?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sure, there is the, hey, Mrs. and Mr. Owner, we're just not going to meet this deadline. Is there any way that we can extend this deadline or whatever? I mean, sure, there's those conversations, but it never seems to dawn on me that that's the option.
Right.
That's a viable option.
You go into your what you know best first, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that is to finish.
Exhaust all options.
Yeah.
You know, kind of
It's
mentality.
interesting because when you think about like the work ethic side of things, I think that that's where we see a lot of the pushback in today's practice is that that even happens at all. Like you're getting paid a salary or you're getting paid hourly for the time that you're there spending to do the job, and we know how inefficient time spent on jobs is, right? It's
Sure.
just normal work days. It's probably like half of the normal work day is actually productive, if that.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's just kind of built in as far as expectations and stuff go, depending on the type of job that you have. I'm sure that people rolling their eyes about that, but I mean, in typical office culture, I would say that that's pretty true. There's a
Hmm.
lot of walking around and talking going on, right? And it's not to say that that isn't informing decisions and it's not part of the bigger whole. It absolutely is, but you can't directly attribute it to productivity necessarily, right? So,
Right. Right. Right.
um, but there's a huge pushback against the all nighter mentality or and you say it in a better way, which is work ethic. And those two things are not necessarily, don't go together. Right. And I would say like a really good work ethic would make it so that all-nighters never happen. Right.
Absolutely.
Because of everybody's kind of willingness to work together and agree on what that deadline is and get the things, plan it out and make sure everything happens. But the curveballs come in and some little snowball starts and it turns into a giant snowball, and an emergency happens in somebody's life and it pulls them away. And like what I'm talking about is just life situations, right? They always happen. It's a guarantee, right? They always say, take whatever time you say you're going to attribute to this task and double it, right?
Right.
Because that's what it actually takes. What you think it takes is not what it takes. You think it takes times 2 is what it actually takes, right?
Exactly.
Or times 3, depending on the person, right? So, but there's a lot of pushback, and I think it comes from a bigger, not experience. I think it comes from inexperience in that, which is to say that people don't know what it takes when they're fresh to get things done and how much coordination that takes and how many curveballs there are. But they also understand that the world won't end if that deadline isn't hit. Right?
Right.
And that, like you said, you don't immediately say, okay, we're not going to hit this deadline. Let's just go ask for more time. There's probably actually no harm there, because if you communicate with the expectation holder, it's very likely that they will be graceful towards you, right? And give you some grace. Yeah. But your first instinct is to let's hunker down, because you have this army inspired work ethic and that's probably more a Cormac inspired work ethic than an army inspired work ethic. It's just you can draw a parallel there. So I just think though that we do see, it's obvious there's a huge pushback in that, because it isn't the end of the world, and the architectural world has never ended because of a deadline was missed. And we're not talking like missed it by a year, you missed it by a day or something, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's definitely something that it's interesting to think about when you actually step back and you say, well, no, this is the profession we've always had. And there's people actively saying, why are we doing it like this? And you're not allowed to say, because we've always done it like this.
Right.
I need a real answer.
And I think that's where you were going, and what I was thinking is why are we so reluctant to just put the brakes on? I mean, we always seem to approach it with, oh my gosh, if I don't meet this deadline, they're going to fire me. And
it's a fight or flight mentality,
else.
Right? Like
totally.
It is lizard brain type stuff. Like our survival depends on us hitting this deadline.
Right.
And we're going to die if we don't.
Exactly. So, I don't necessarily think that in my case, when I'm, sitting there saying, well, it just needs, I said that I was going to be done by Friday, so I'm going to get it done by Friday. I'm a man of my word.
Yep. Your reputation. Yep. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's more just, hey, I mean, and do I hit it all the time? No. But, do I try to? Sure.
Yeah. You want a really good batting average there, right?
Exactly. And I think that, that may be, the approach with many of us. And again, it's also that, that fight or flight, feast and famine, what other options can you come up with that, kind of describe this mentality that architects have, that if I don't get it done, the world will end, the sky will fall. Mm-hmm. And we've I guess it's because we've entered into this relationship assuming that it's abusive, not asking the question of, is it really abusive, or are we just abusive to ourselves?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So you went back to the office at least once. I know that that's a transition a lot of people are starting to go through.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering what that was like for you, because it's not unlike what you're doing. There's no office for me to go to. So I'm interested to hear what that experience has been like going back.
So I got to say that, first of all, it was weird, because one, I didn't go into the Baltimore office. I went into the DC office.
Hmm.
The PIC for the particular project I am on, he's out of the DC office,
And that
and
one's
it's
actually
closer.
closer to you, right?
Yeah, it is totally closer for me. And when there's like practically no real, I mean the parking garage at the building was practically empty.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure.
it was really weird. It was surreal. I mean, because you go in, there's no activity in the building. It just seems so quiet.
It's like, where'd they put all the people? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the lobby was me and the security guard
Mm.
at the front desk, and so you had to like check in and go through the whole little check your temperature and all of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of weird in itself. So when I was there, a couple of different observations that I was making was, one, I just brought in my laptop. I probably could have used somebody's workstation, but seeing how like everybody sort of like left all of their stuff as is,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't. It felt to me like it felt weird for me to like say, oh, I'm going to go use this person's workstation because they've got a couple of extra monitors. It was just like I don't want to sit at somebody else's desk and mess up their stuff, and have respect for that person and their
Their
personal
personal
workspace,
space.
even though
Yeah.
they haven't. Yeah, even
Mm-hmm.
though they haven't been there for a year and a few months,
Right.
and and is it anybody's workspace anymore? Is it just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like hoteling at this point? And so I'd only worked on a single monitor, which I have since basically I don't know, hell, it feels like almost a decade now that I've worked with more than just a single monitor, that I felt so weirdly unproductive on just one single monitor. Kept kind of like switching back and forth between screens on the single monitor and everything else, and I felt so, I don't know.
That's really
um
interesting because what you're saying there, I think, is that especially for the way that you're working, is that you are seriously desk bound, even though you have a
I
portable
I
computer.
am.
Yeah.
I very much am. I don't I mean,
The drafting
if
table
I
is just
was
now on multiple screens instead of one big
it,
layout.
totally, totally, totally. I and I have like a system of like which monitor is what, and so
Yeah.
like if I hear like a bing,
You know which
and something
where to,
pops up through
you know
email,
exactly where to look.
I know which way to turn my head, or if I hear a dong, I'm like, oh, I got to go over to that one, and it's just like whatever sound, like somebody who's trying to communicate with me via Teams or Zoom or email or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
I know kind of like where the conversation needs to, my attention needs to, lean towards. And then just, I like using both Revit and Bluebeam and all these other things on the larger screens. And, I think my laptop, I think might be a 16-inch or 17. I mean, it's a reasonably larger laptop. It's not like the small screen laptop. So, because that would have just been that would have been archaic for me to to try
If it was
to
your single screen.
um, if it was just my single screen.
I want
But
to just clarify
so
something because you said you like Revit and Bluebeam, but you actually didn't say you liked working in Revit and Bluebeam. You said you
I like
liked
using
you liked it
like
how you had it on your screen.
yes, I like using, if I have to use them, I will use them on my larger screen.
Just wanted to clarify that.
You know, it's the closest thing to drafting board size screens as I could get.
Yeah.
I think I've got just two 23-inch monitors and then my laptop screen. So
Control
it's good.
command center. We call it the command
Exactly.
center. Yeah.
Yes. And it's so, it's just, it felt weird being out of the comfort zone of your home, but it also felt in a way sort of good to be like discussing the projects. We were pulling out samples. We were looking at, colors. We were holding up stone samples and things like that. And we were talking about like real tangible things that you don't normally do. Now, I mean, it's been, several weeks since that occurred. And we keep, I was actually supposed to go in yesterday, but just the schedule nobody's schedule could marry up with it. So we decided to kind of like say, okay, let's punt it to another week.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of, I mean, like, so now it's interesting. It's like, now it's this, we're in an option phase of like, okay, we want to meet in the office because we know that it's going to be good for productivity, at least to kind of like
For
talk through
certain types of
projects with
things,
each
right?
other for certain types of things. And then you're like, you go in there and you've just got to, now it feels like, you have to almost have an agenda. It's a,
We're going to
there
limit
is,
this
there
time
is
as much as we can.
exactly, it's like, it's going into the office now, at least now, seems like you're going to a meeting that you have to plan. And it's almost like, give me 2 weeks advance notice of this one, and I'll make sure that I've got all of my materials ready, and you make sure all of yours are, and here's the agenda. And if we stick to it, we can be productive. Whereas when you were talking about the productivity of being in the office of kind of like that 50% ratio,
Mm-hmm.
not all of it is necessarily lost on just being billable and
Right.
productive. It's team building.
Yeah.
It's
Morale.
you
Yeah.
know in,
Culture.
yeah, it's morale.
The
Exactly. It's all
intangibles.
of these other things.
The intangible tangibles.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
Totally.
I'm
Totally.
wondering about your commute, your commute time. What did you did it was it just like before, like you're listening to podcasts
Well,
or whatever, or because you're not
well,
working at that time? Because I mean, that's probably the biggest shift to work from home is commute time. It doesn't. There is no commute time. It's you walking maybe 100 feet, maybe less,
much less.
or maybe not even rolling out of bed, right? Maybe the call can
Right.
happen in bed. It doesn't matter. But now you're forced to commute, and you're driving, right? You're not Ubering, so you can't be working
Right.
during that time. So now you tangibly lost time during the day to do that. And I think if you think about that as just you, that's one thing. If you think about that as your entire office or our
Yeah.
entire profession, it's an inordinate amount of time. And I think that is something that we really need to think about and consider deeply moving forward. Because, like you're saying, you're being very specific about the agenda of why you're going to the office and what you're going to do there to limit it because you've found this other time, right? You unlocked these other
Right. Right.
levels that never existed before that. And now it's like you can't unsee that.
The however of that is
Mm-hmm.
the time that I'm using to commute in
Mm-hmm.
is time that I'm actually kind of like just recapturing me stepping away from the computer, because now I
Yeah,
find myself in front of the computer
I
a
totally get
hell of a
that.
lot more
Yeah, it's
than
like the
I was.
separation that you go through is a good thing.
Exactly.
Giving yourself that ability to switch modes, right? By
Because if you,
using that time.
yeah, because if you think about it, when we were leaving the office, when we were in the office and we were leaving the office and heading home, and having our kind of like my commute was an hour, and so that decompression time, and so then when I got home, I could just be at home,
Yeah,
not be at work,
right,
just be at home.
right.
And now work and home are the same thing, and so
Are you still in the
they're
dining room with your setup?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yes, I
probably a
am.
big reason why, right? I mean, you guys are in a small space, and
Yeah.
like I have a separate room that I obviously went through a lot of trouble to create this space, remodeling.
Right.
But I mean, it's behind a door, right, that I can close and
Yeah.
walk away
Yeah.
from, and I think that does make a difference. So not everybody has the same
Yeah. Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
And so the line is completely blurred,
Mm-hmm.
at working from home. And if I did have, maybe an office space or something like that, but you've been here and you know how small the space is, and not a real complaint. It's just, as I'm working from home, I don't necessarily have that ability to get away
Yeah.
from work. And so, like, I find myself on occasion, I'll get up from my desk, I'll walk over, and maybe my daughter's hanging out with the dog or something like that. And like almost instantaneously when I go to like pet the dog, you hear this dun 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 dun. And you're like,
Getting a call. Yeah.
I've even made words to the Zoom ringtone.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Zoom
have.
ringtone. It's like, oh my God, another meeting. Let's kill me. It's just,
It's the Zoom jingle.
it's Zoom jingle. It's now just, you know, like.
That's awesome.
So, you know,
Yeah, that
uh,
to me is going to be kind of eye-opening as people do start to go back. And I totally appreciate what you're saying about using that time to switch modes of like compartments of your life, right? Like you've got a work
yeah,
compartment, you've
yeah.
got a home and a family compartment. And the distance, the physical distance between those two is appreciated for that reason. And at the same time, it just in many other people's lives, it totally takes away from their quality of life, right?
So,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's just I think you can't escape the reality of that as well.
right. So I saw this like meme like floating around, and they were talking about, the thirds of the day. It's 8 hours for sleep,
Mm.
8 hours for work, and 8 hours for your own time.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout this whole thing, they have like so intertwined with each other that it's going to be really hard for a lot of people to kind of untangle those thirds
Yeah.
and start to kind of like regain some sense of normalcy. And so when I hear of, kids who are graduating high school who want this, want to take a break and not just like immediately leap into college. And I have my own child who's talking about the gap year and wanting to do that. I'm okay with that because it's going to take time to kind of like regain the normalcy. And in fact, to be quite honest with you, I'm not sure how much of a normalcy his junior and senior year were. And so if it takes a year to kind of basically kind of get your mind right to like what the world amongst people are,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like I'm perfectly fine with that, because I think that there's going to be a lot of kids who are going into college after the crazy 2 years of like the end of their junior year, and their entire senior year of isolation, that are going to be struggling when they hit college, and
That was
for
my
parents,
oldest. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
And so yeah, I mean, like my oldest, he just finished his sophomore year of school, and only one semester of his entire college experience, if we want to use it with big massive air quotes around it,
Mm-hmm.
was spent in a classroom.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even know what a college experience really is.
Yeah.
And then and so to like almost regain that sense of normalcy, and I'm using these students as an example, but I think it translates into the office where this, I mean, anytime we see each other like in person, for the few people who like almost like want to poke at him and say, are you real?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like,
Am I
there's going
dreaming?
to be some, there's going to be some weird adjustment time where you've seen them. Like, we've got new employees that I've never met face to face that
Right.
I've been working with for now, a couple of, at least on this new project that I'm working on for, at least, what, three and a half months.
Yeah.
And so for 3.5 months, they're a new employee who've been onboarding to the office that they're just like, normally it would be like, come into the office, meet people, kind of like ease yourself into it, understanding the culture and everything else. And literally they like their culture is their screen in their own, comfort zone of their home.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have to get out of that comfort zone and go into an office and make sure that before they walk out the door, they're wearing pants. Um,
Double
you know,
check.
and, and just make sure that, like it's going to
That's
be a
what we need the
weird,
Amazon cameras for. It's like a hey, you're not wearing pants
exact,
right before you
like
walk out the door.
as you or as you walk out the door, your Ring camera picks it up. It's just and then sends you a message,
Mm-hmm.
Evan, you are not wearing pants.
We're
Like,
using AI
dang it.
technology. Yeah.
just, just to remind ourselves that there is some sense of decorum that you have failed to
Right.
observe.
Right.
But it's just and so so it's going to be interesting to see when people kind of like come out of this. It's I think of, and I don't know if you ever watched Walking Dead, but episode 1, I remember pretty vividly. I watched it a couple of times just because I was just like, is this really this show's like pretty cutting edge at the time, and I was like so kind of like caught off guard on like how they were showing this. But you have Rick Grimes, the main character, who's basically waking up in the hospital to this new world, and he's just like dazed and confused and like what the hell's going on and all of this other stuff. And it's almost going to be that way for every one of us. I mean, we will sort of feel like the Walking Dead as we're like coming into this kind of like reality of going back to work.
Yeah, totally.
And I still feel like, because of this, there's going to be that shift in the way that we work and the amount that we're actually in the office versus, working from home, that, employees are going to, like when we start, like right now, I don't know, one of the things that you have missed now working, at your firm is that there's like now that like all of these projects that went on hold, so everybody, basically tried to like, either sustain and, pick up as much projects as they could to basically kind of get them through this time, or, there were layoffs or whatever. And so now all these projects are hitting again. And so everybody's learning that they're critically understaffed. And so now there's just this massive, like everywhere, this massive like search for talent to come either back to the firm or, to pull new talent into the firm. And but everybody's looking. And so it's really hard. I mean, we've been, on a search, for kind of like, good project architects and everything else. And, the problem is that everybody's out there looking for them. And so,
Are you
it's
looking
interesting.
for remote people as well, or just people who are regional?
Well, so like right now, because we are remote, I mean, like
Like, would you hire
as a
somebody out of state? I guess is a question, or
well,
not.
and and that's interesting because we have people who've, even before COVID, we've had plenty of remote people. We've got people in Austin, Texas. We've got people in, Charleston, North Carolina. I mean, we've got all sorts of people all over the place, as well as the 3 offices that we have. And so, we do have experience with remote working and, people who are, part of the firm. But most of those people were part of the firm in the offices, and then they had moved to other locations, and we just didn't want to lose those people, so we switched them to, remote employees.
Hmm.
But I don't know if we've actually talked about like hiring remote employees in the way that you're talking about. And that's kind of interesting. And, I might have to, like reach out to HR and kind of ask that question because, it it is something that, could potentially be an option for us. Is like, hey, I know somebody who's in Florida who's an excellent, project architect who would be perfect for ASG,
But they're not going to
but,
relocate. Yeah,
but they're not going to relocate to
yeah,
Baltimore.
right.
Would we consider ever hiring them, kind of thing?
Well,
Just
that's
as,
the thing is, I think so. Not being at a
you know,
firm, I think it's a lot easier for me to say this now. But it's like if your firm is not open to that, and you're like we've talked about this on the show, it's like
yeah,
there's A players, B players, and C players. Let's just say that we can lump everybody into one of those letters. And the A players, if they can't, they're the ones who are going to demand to work remotely
yeah,
because they're going to be the most sought after. So they're the ones who are most heavily competed for their talent and for their
yep,
what they bring to the
yep,
table. So they're going to have the most options, and the most options means you get to work from any location for a specific company, right? Or
yeah,
companies, even, right?
right,
And you can't be regionally. You can't just be looking regionally for those people. They like you. There's maybe 1% who are actually going to be regional and fall into that category because we've all proven that you don't have to be physically there to do the thing, right? And for the most part, and if you do, like you can plan ahead for it and you can get on a plane or you can drive and get there and be there for that
yeah,
event, and then you can go back to the way you prefer them. I don't
exactly,
see how a
exactly.
firm can survive without that mentality.
And that's where I was kind of going, is because, um, you know, with that talent, with that, kind of like everybody's looking now, it is definitely a buyer's market. And so they're going to look around and they're going to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Do you offer remote working?
Right.
And if they say no, we are
Or
going to
we're
demand that
considering
you
it.
are, yeah,
It's not good enough.
if we, no, or we're considering it, or, we've been talking about it, if you don't have a plan in place for, options like that,
Mhm.
that A talent is going to go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
They're going to say, okay, that's fine. You know,
Yep.
so, they don't necessarily always want to be physically present. And truth be told, sometimes I'm not even mentally present, but whatever. Um, but
This is one of those things. There was a headline I saw. I did not read the article, but I mean, they're calling this like the Great Resignation, and
interesting.
and it is interesting, and it's because of exactly what we're talking about, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're gonna, because this is how we've always done it, or because somebody in a leadership position deems it like this is the way we need to do it in our company. It's like, well, there's plenty of other companies who don't deem it that way, so I'm going to go there instead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and we've seen that. We've seen that, like not just our firm, but other firms have basically, seen where, okay, this has offered me an opportunity to like move closer to family.
Right.
And,
Or take care of a parent,
or take care of
anything.
Yeah,
There's so
exactly.
many things, yeah, that are actual,
And
real, tangible things.
yes,
Yeah.
it's that real life experience that's going to make, you know, that employee's life better for themselves. But then in turn, if they have the opportunity to continue to either work with you or come on board and work with you, but then work remotely,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to make them better,
Yes.
because
The company
they're
better.
in a
Yep.
better place.
Right.
Exactly. So
Yeah. That's like
if
saying
firms,
when you're housing the homeless and providing them with resources, they make for a better, your community is better for that, right? It's like if you raise the whole boat, right? And you give equity to people who like, I need this, you need that. They're not the same thing. They're not the exact same benefit, but we both need these things to be better. Everything gets better along with that. Have to think about it at the broader scale like that. And so I totally agree. If somebody's life situation is in a better place because of the equitable resource that you're providing to them so that they can enrich their lives or make somebody else's life better in another way, it will make your company culture better too. It will make your projects better too. It will make your outcomes better too.
Yep. Yep. All the above.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, so this great resignation is a reality that companies have to deal with, and it's basically just people taking agency over their situation, where they didn't necessarily understand that they had that before. Everybody kind of felt like you did everything you could to get hired by a company, and now the tables have kind of flipped, and the companies have to do everything they can to attract you to them.
Right. Exactly.
It was always a two-way thing. I mean, when you went in for an interview, you were getting interviewed, but you were also interviewing the company, right, to see if it was a right fit. I don't know that everybody thinks about it that way, but that's how it should be. I think that people should think about it that way. Now it's even more apparent that that's what's because of the agency.
I'll definitely say, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me on this, that early in my career, I don't think that was ever really the case. I was looking for, I was looking for a job, kind of thing. But the more and more I've, developed as an architect, the more and more that I, see the profession and experience it from the view of other people and stuff, that has totally been my experience, is that, if I were to move to, a different job, I mean, the reason why I came to ASG was because of the culture, the design ethos, the work ethics, just everything about it, said that it was a much better place to work than from, where I am, where I was. And so I was more conscious about that decision that I needed to make, and that, having the opportunity to talk to other people. And, the first red flag, and I always tell this to everybody who, is like, okay, I'm going to be moving and I'm going to go and look for another job and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, bummer that we're going to lose you. However, if you do that, please do these few things. Yes, they're interviewing you, but you interview them.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them to talk to who would be your peers. Ask them to have some time to like understand, this place. get the vibe that you want to get from that place. Now, and if they're immediately going to say, no, we don't want you to talk to any of our employees, then that's a red flag of like
Right.
they're trying to hide, the culture, like how bad the work culture is there, and that all you really are to them is a warm body to fill a seat and click a button. And so I've been kind of like offering up that advice to everybody, when they're leaving or looking or whatever else. And I always and I thought to myself that it took me a long time to think about that in when I was coming up, because no one really gave you advice of like, hey, I'm quitting this place and I'm going to go look, somewhere else. And it's just like, okay, well, you should look for this and this and this. They're like, well, screw you, you're leaving me, high and dry kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is. It's just like I said, it's now a market of, it's like it, the person who's looking for a job should really, there are those cases that yes, you just need a job because you need money, you've been unemployed or whatever, and you just need that. Understandable. But do yourself a favor, if you have the opportunity to find the place that is the right fit for you, try to do that and try to like look into the culture. Because I mean, really, if we go back to that 8 hours of sleeping, 8 hours of our own, and then 8 hours working, well, then that 8 hours is that 1/3 of your day is influenced by other people. Yeah. And it is very precious.
Yeah, I think it's further complicated now because I think the model that you and I experienced was still based on where you're located. So
yeah,
a lot of times, depending on if you're in an urban area, maybe there's 10 different firms or 20 or 30 that you could potentially look at. If you're in a suburban area or a rural area, that number gets real small real fast, right? Or you're going to be commuting a long distance. So some people were locked to only a couple of choices because that's all there was, because you had to be there, right? Now that's not the case at all. And not only is that not the case, but the work landscape has changed significantly to where you can fill in gaps of time in your unemployment with gig economy type stuff or internet enabled stuff that, gig economy falls into that category, right? Where there's all these platforms out there where you can get piecemeal work and make a living doing that.
Yeah.
You could drive for Uber and Lyft. You could work on Fiverr and do graphic design for somebody. You can put an ad on Craigslist to draw plans for local remodels. There's so many things that you could do to fill gaps that never existed before. And so there's not this kind of sense of, well, we're the only game in town, take it or leave it, and you'll like it when you come here. It's not like that anymore at all.
Right.
And I think that's another kind of shift that companies have to understand that they're competing against is the agency of the individual is much different than it ever was before. And it's a very real thing. And so I think companies, and I mean, the company that I was with for a long time, I mean, is pretty aware of that, right? And they're trying to figure out ways, like if you want people to come to the office, you have to figure out ways to attract them to your office. You have to give them a reason to be there. You have to give them resources that they don't have otherwise. You have to do proactive things to create a company culture that you're proud of and that people want to brag about so that they can brag about it to other people, because we all know that like personal recommendations or the referral network is where most people come from, right? So that's how you get the people to come work for your company who are a good fit, because they align with that way of thinking, the things that you're putting out there. So it can't just be lip service. You actually have to live it. It's very complicated to run a company. I mean, I don't envy anybody who's trying to do that and attract the talent to get the work done. I mean, it's an interesting paradigm shift that we've gone through in the last decade.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Anyway, wow. Well, we took a couple of weeks off, and I feel like we're catching back up right now. So
I know, right? Yeah, but I mean, whereas hopefully yours was a little bit of relaxing, because I know that you did a little bit of traveling. Mm-hmm. Even got a chance to see you.
Yeah, maybe next episode we could talk about that.
Yeah, but then and then me, of course, worked myself to death. But yeah,
And you
I mean,
hiked yourself
it
to
was
death, so we should talk about
and
that
hike
too.
myself. Yeah,
Relive
exactly.
it.
For the for the next episode.
Next episode. All right. See you then.
All right, man. See you.